Have you ever wondered what you could do and how you could adapt to become a better interpersonal communicator? Well, today we're going to explore this topic. First, our discussion will be on defining communication, discussing the implications of the interactional adaptation theory on communication, defining interpersonal communication, the communication process and the roles we play, types of messages, and how to adapt to be a better speaker and a better listener when communicating interpersonally. Firstly, what is communication? It's the process of sending and receiving a message in order to share meaning. That's according to Myers from the Communication Applications textbook. The interactional adaptation theory states that individuals will adapt their behaviors when interacting with one another in order to obtain specific needs, desires, and meet their expectations during their exchange. This is according to Knapp Daly from our classroom text, Interpersonal Communication. Now, this theory can be practiced in any setting, whether it's personal or professional. So with that in mind, let's see how one could adapt their behaviors to be a better interpersonal communicator. First of all, let's define interpersonal communication. It's communication that occurs between two people. It could be face-to-face, via telephone, email, cell phone, really any other technological advancement you could do communication through. The roles we play when we communicate. Well, you're a sender of a message or you're a speaker, which defined by Nordquist 2014 from the website Communicating, the speaker and the listener. He defines it as transmitting the message through the channel or a channel. A receiver or listener actually decodes this message. Let's take a look at the communication process model. The sender sends the message to the receiver. The receiver receives the messages based on past experience, cultures, attitudes, values, knowledge, and feelings, and they interpret and evaluate and respond, sending feedback to the sender, and in turn, they swap roles. Now the sender becomes the receiver, and the receiver, once they send feedback, becomes the sender. Remember, feedback helps the communicators make sure that the message has been decoded correctly. And this comes from us from a YouTube video from the IISD Communication Applications segment. There are two types of messages. You have the verbal and the nonverbal. Let's explore these both. Starting with verbal messages. A verbal message is spoken and generally relies on words to carry the meaning. Examples of this would be letters, conversations, emails, and texts. Nonverbal messages are those expressed without words. They rely on the use of facial and body movements in order to carry meaning. Examples would be gestures, your appearance, the space or proximity between two people when they speak, the timing of the message, facial expressions, the tone of the voice, sign language even, as well as touch. Now, what type of message is more powerful? Well, the answer is nonverbal messages. For example, if I made the statement, "This test was hard," well, depending on my nonverbal cues that I give along with the verbal message, that right there is going to impact how the message is interpreted. For example, "This test was hard," versus "This test was hard." Depending on my nonverbal cues, the tone of my voice, my facial expressions, sarcasm noted, those different qualities, you're going to be able to denote whether or not the test really was hard. So indeed, the nonverbal message is more powerful. Now, how can you be a better speaker when sending messages? According to McLean, 2003, When speaking, there are common problems that one can avoid when communicating. We're going to discuss 3 common problems that typically happen. Number one, when words have more than one meaning. Secondly, receiving the whole message. And finally, homophones. Problem number 1. When people have different meanings for the same word when communicating, there can be confusion. For example, another person may not have the same meaning for a word like tight, cool, bad, hot. Typically, you're going to find this in slang. That's why I point out the fact that a lot of times this happens when there is a generational gap. If this young teenager comes and visits her grandmother and discusses, for example, how she feels about her shirt, okay? So just follow this scene. Hey, Grandma, I love your shirt. It's so tight. It's so cool. What? My shirt's tight? Gee, maybe I have put on a little weight. I don't know. It is kind of cool, but I don't have long sleeves on today. It's kind of hot out here. So I'm out here on the porch sipping my lemonade, just trying to enjoy the sun a little. All right, so you got to see right there. Grandma doesn't have the same meaning for those words as her teenage daughter. Again, this can become a problem. The second problem is interpreting the whole message. It's important to understand that you have to interpret not only the verbal messages sent, but the nonverbal messages sent. And to be honest with you, this probably wasn't as much of a problem until technology was introduced. Because technology, as we read from NAP and Daily in our classroom text, Interpersonal Communication, technology doesn't convey nonverbal cues nearly as well as face-to-face communication. In fact, because of that, your communicating can be a bit misleading at times. So in order to communicate effectively, one will definitely need to make sure they pay attention to the verbal as well as the nonverbal messages, if at all possible. And finally, problem number 3. Words that sound alike but have different meanings, also known as homophones, can get mixed up. When, for example, no and no, bear and bear, hair and hair, read and read, red and red, lots of different examples out there that people can confuse, especially people who are new to the English language. Okay, let me give you an example of a lady going and taking her animal to the vet. Ma'am, I come to pick up my animal. Okay. All right. What's your name? My name's Miss Jones. Oh, okay. Just one second. Let me check on that. I'm really sorry, Miss Jones. Your hair is dead. What you say? I just went and spent $50 on this new hairdo. My hair ain't dead. It can't be flat. It can't be dead. What you talking about? No. I'm sorry, Miss Jones, but your hair, it's dead. Your bunny. Oh no, not my bunny. Oh no, Roger's dead. Roger Rabbit's dead. Okay, so I exaggerated a little, but you get the point. Anytime that words that have same meanings are mistaken for one another, communication can break down. To improve your interpersonal communication skills as a speaker and help you to avoid these problems, here are some considerations you might take. For example, you need to make sure you understand who you're talking to. Know who your audience is. If you're communicating interpersonally with grandma versus your mom or your sister or your brother or a student or a fellow church member, know who your audience is and be deliberate when choosing the words that you use when speaking, considering that what you're trying to say and who you're trying to say it to. You want to make sure that your language is exactly what you need it to be to convey the message. Also, make sure that you listen with your eyes and your ears and take in the verbal as well as the nonverbal. How to be a better listener. Firstly, you should understand the listening process, be aware of barriers to listening, and I'm going to give you some guidelines for good listening. The steps of the listening process, according to Galvin and Cooper, 1994, are to receive the message, to interpret the message, to evaluate it, and to respond to it. three major barriers to listening are external, speaker, and self, according to McLean 2003. Firstly, external barriers are situations in the environment that keep you from paying careful attention. Bees flying around, cell phones, even the television being on. Speaker barriers are characteristics of the speaker that interfere with listening. Examples might be if you're prejudiced. You can project prejudice and not realize it at times. Your believability. If you're known to be a liar, people are going to probably not take you at your word. As well as your appearance and mannerisms. Sometimes your mannerisms can be a bit distracting, and people won't listen to you if you're communicating with them. Finally, we have self barriers. They are personal attitudes or behaviors that interfere with listening. Now, this has to do with you, the person sending the message. You can be internally distracted. For example, you might be sick, like this little girl. You might have a lack of knowledge. You might just not know enough about the topic, and so people just don't take you at your word. Again, prejudice comes up. You may go, oh, she is so blind. I don't want to talk to her. So you might not be genuine in your communications. As well, your desire to talk, if you're that type of person that can talk the horns off of a billy goat, then people probably at some point are going to tune you out. So some guidelines to help you to be a better listener when you're communicating interpersonally are these. Number one, you need to watch for nonverbal clues, especially if you're boring someone to death. Pick up on that. Let them talk. Number two, see things from the speaker's point of view. Be empathetic. Avoid distractions. Put those cell phones away. Turn off the television, or at least mute it when someone's over to talk with you. Listen for the new and the unusual. Listen for repetition. If someone's repeating something, more than likely it's important. Get prepared to listen. Make a deliberate effort to listen and speak with someone. Respond to the speaker. Give feedback. Let them know that you're listening. Apply the ideas that they're giving you to yourself. Reflect on it. Then you can interject your feelings and thoughts into the conversation as well. Look for structure in what they're telling you. There's usually a beginning, a middle, and an end. Review and preview the points that were made so that you realize after you do this what's important and what needs to be reflected on. This came from McLean in 2003. These are my sources, and today I discussed with you ways that you can be a better interpersonal communicator. Hopefully these tips will help you in your future interpersonal interactions. Thank you.